On this Wednesday night, another allegation of sexual misconduct in the military.
People do not understand the breadth and depth of the problem.
Why one top officer says she has to quit. A Global News exclusive interview. And another exclusive. How the RCMP reportedly ignored harassment complaints against an alleged spy. The abhorrent mistreatment of another Indigenous patient in Quebec. The two nurses accused of racist behavior. And green with envy.
Hopefully this is the last year that we're going to have to do St. Patrick's Day this way.
Another St. Paddy's Day in the pandemic.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. She is among the top ranks of the Canadian military, and tonight Lieutenant Colonel Eleanor Taylor is speaking exclusively to Global News about her decision to quit. In a powerful one-on-one interview with our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stephenson, Taylor explains how disgust over allegations of sexual misconduct at the highest level drove her away and fueled her hope to make a difference.
I felt that perhaps I might be able to add to some of the momentum here by signaling my disappointment and forcing people to recognize the cost of failing to address this issue.
Taylor has formally requested her release from the Canadian Armed Forces as soon as possible. As Mercedes Stephenson reports, it appears they will be tough shoes to fill.
It was a tour of constant contact with the enemy, patrols, gunfights, ambushes, and deadly roadside bombs.
My company in Afghanistan was a remarkable group of people.
Lieutenant Colonel Eleanor Taylor led her troops and made Canadian history, the first woman to command an infantry company in war. That wasn't the only glass ceiling Taylor would shatter. JTF-2, Canada's most elite and secretive Special Forces unit, spotted and recruited Taylor, where she would lead the unit's Vancouver Olympics preparations. On International Women's Day, Taylor resigned from the military.
I felt that the most powerful thing that I could do in uniform was to leave it.
Taking a stand in frustration, disgust, and despair over allegations of sexual misconduct by military leaders and the brass's failure to address the systemic problem in the forces.
To find that senior leadership is not living the example that they expect of us, it cut the legs out from under everybody.
The breach of trust with the troops was devastating, but not surprising.
I was hearing this undercurrent and feeling this undercurrent of seething rage from within the women and other victims in the organization. For people who live in this organization, this type of behavior is no surprise.
In the days that followed Global News reporting of alleged sexual misconduct at the highest levels of the Canadian Forces, Taylor experienced deafening institutional silence and internal conversations that revealed some senior leaders did not believe the problem was real or take it seriously. The attitude was bunker down and hope it all blows over.
There are people who are saying, troops don't care. This is an Ottawa problem. That, for me, was the indicator that we really don't understand this problem.
So Lieutenant Colonel Eleanor Taylor is taking off the uniform she loves, once again leading, trying to protect the troops who she commands by sacrificing her own career. Taylor says the military will need outside help to change.
I do not think that the military can fix this on its own. We need to leverage experts from outside our organization. We have demonstrated quite resoundingly that we cannot fix this on our own.
Lieutenant Colonel Eleanor Taylor has been invited to speak to Army Council. That is the most senior Army leadership that meets here in Ottawa. Part of what she wants to raise with them, Robin, changing the military's culture.
Mercedes, has there been any response from the military or the defense minister?
Well, what's really struck me about this story has been the unofficial response from the military, and it's been resounding. and like nothing I've ever seen in almost 2 decades of covering that institution. I have heard from men and women of all ranks who say that Eleanor Taylor was somebody who they profoundly respected, and that her decision to resign in disdain over what is happening has really made them rethink how serious this problem might be in the forces and reckon with it. Meanwhile, Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan says he's committed to creating a safe work environment for everyone on the defense team, saying all options are on the table. But the opposition is criticizing the government, the NDP laying the blame for this directly at the government's feet and saying the Prime Minister must change the system now before more women like Lieutenant Colonel Eleanor Taylor are forced out of their careers. Tomorrow, we're going to hear more from Lieutenant Colonel Eleanor Taylor about deeply upsetting incidents of sexual misconduct in the Canadian Forces and why women haven't been reporting it, that the consequences of coming forward can be worse than suffering in silence. Robin?
Mercedes Stephenson in Ottawa. Thanks, Mercedes. Global News has uncovered exclusive details about an independent review into an RCMP unit while it was being run by a suspected mole. In 2016, Cameron Ortis was handpicked to lead the force's National Intelligence Coordination Center. In 2019, he was arrested and charged with preparing to share secrets with a foreign entity. None of the allegations has been proven. Just months into his leadership role, employees were complaining to RCMP leadership about harassment and a toxic work environment. But as David Akin explains, the review found those complaints were ignored until it was too late.
After the RCMP's Cameron Ortis was arrested in 2019 on charges of offering up police secrets to an unknown foreign entity, the RCMP ordered a review of the unit he headed, the National Intelligence Coordination Center. The NICC is home to the RCMP's top counter-spies and intelligence analysts, a clearinghouse of the most top-secret information held by the National Police Force. That review is now complete. And while it has not yet been made public, Global News has obtained a partially censored copy of the report. It paints a picture of a toxic workplace where harassment and demeaning comments were common from the time Ortis took over the unit in 2016. Former RCMP Superintendent Angela Workman-Stark reviewed the version of the report provided to Global News.
I think another aspect that stood out for me was this real lack of accountability in the sense of no one took ownership of the issue and saw that these complaints were addressed in some fashion.
The report describes how morale among the country's top intelligence analysts had hit rock bottom. Yet, RCMP management ignored multiple complaints from employees. "We were ignored completely," one said. "It was a terrible negative environment," said another. "All our careers were harmed," and so on. The review's authors interviewed nearly 50 who worked under Ortis or with his unit.
Anybody reading the report could understand those very human implications for the individuals in terms of all those quotes that were highlighted in the report. I think that was important.
Some of those analysts are now suing the federal government, saying, among other things, that the RCMP's failure to look into their complaints may have allowed Ortis to continue to do the spying he is now accused of. In the meantime, the RCMP said in a statement that it is working to address the findings in the review. Robin?
David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. We have breaking news on the case of the two Michaels. The Chinese government will put them on trial on accusations of spying starting this week. In a statement, Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garneau says our embassy in Beijing has been notified that court hearings for Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig are scheduled to take place on March 19th and March 22nd, respectively. The two men were arrested in December 2018, days after Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou was detained at Vancouver's airport on a U.S. extradition request. Their arrest is widely viewed as an act of retaliation. If you use Microsoft Exchange for email, you may have been affected by a recent cyber attack called DearCry. The hack was extensive, but as Abigail Beeman explains, we may not know whether any Canadian organizations have been hit because they're not required to report it to the government.
We've been alerting to this for the last 2 weeks, and we need these systems updated.
The Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity is warning about a ransomware attack to Microsoft Exchange called DearCry. Microsoft issued a security update 2 weeks ago. The head of the Cyber Centre says they know of Canadian systems still vulnerable.
Your organization is not patched by now. you should seriously consider whether your organization should be running its own information technology.
No Canadian company has reported a hack yet, but that's no comfort. They're also not compelled to do so.
Given the worldwide level of exploitation and the number of systems that we are seeing reported in Canada, or the different systems that we're seeing unpatched systems in Canada, it's very probable. In fact, it's almost certain that there will be victims in Canada.
People who have on-premise Microsoft Exchange servers should absolutely be worried.
Cybersecurity expert Yuan Stevens says it's a problem. We don't know the extent of the issue here.
People can contact the administrators and the IT teams of the organizations they're working at. And I think they should absolutely check in with those IT professionals to figure out, is their data safe?
Cyber criminals are getting a lot more greedy.
A new ransomware threat report shows the highest demand from attackers doubled in 2020 to $30 million. And in the year of the pandemic, the most targeted sector, healthcare.
If they can shut down their entire data management system inside the network, they can prevent that hospital from seeing patients, from performing surgeries.
According to that report, in terms of countries that had stolen data published online across the globe, Canada ranked number 2 after the U.S. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
There are questions tonight about the effectiveness of Canada's COVID Alert app. The app was launched last summer as a tool to help alert Canadians to potential exposures, but it appears so few people have used it that it's had little effect. New public health data shows only 3.8% of about 535,000 people who tested positive after the app went live have used it to warn others. The number of people testing positive for highly contagious new variants is climbing in Canada. According to the Federal Public Health Agency, more than 4,000 variant cases have now been confirmed. Most are the B.1.1.7 variant first identified in the UK. The bulk of the cases are in BC, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec. On the vaccination front, there is slow but steady progress. Over the last 5 days, on average, about 110,000 doses were given out per day, and momentum is picking up across the country. Today, the City of Toronto opened its 3 mass immunization clinics. For now, appointments are available only for people 80 and over. About 450 people are expected to be vaccinated per day. The city says it plans to ramp up operations when there's more supply. Quebec's healthcare system is once again facing allegations of racism after an Indigenous woman came forward with her story of mistreatment. It happened in the same health authority where Joyce Echaquan died in September. Echaquan had used her phone to record the racism she faced from hospital staff. There was no recording this time. But as Mike Armstrong reports, management appears to have had no trouble proving it was true.
Je me suis sentie humiliée.
Humiliation is the word she uses. Jocelyn Ottawa says that's what she felt after visiting a clinic where the staff was supposed to make her feel better. It happened here last Friday. Ottawa went in for a treatment to one of her feet and says the nurses she met intimidated and mocked her.
Il y en a une d'entre elles qui m'a dit, est-ce que...
She says one of them asked her if she could sing a song in Atikamekw, her Indigenous language. Then one joked she had taken Ottawa's phone to steal her personal information, and then there was a joke about her first name, Jocelyn.
Il y en a une qui a vu
She says when one of the nurses saw her name in the file, she said they'd call her Joyce.
On va t'appeler Joyce.
That apparently being a reference to Joyce Echaquan, the Atikamekw woman who died in hospital in September. The 37-year-old recorded her last moments before dying. Staff at the hospital could be heard in the background calling her stupid as hell and only good for sex. Both Echaquan's incident and Ottawa's were in the same town under the same regional health authority. The Regional Health Board confirms it was informed of the incident Monday and opened an investigation immediately. By Tuesday morning, both nurses involved were suspended. By Tuesday afternoon, both were fired. In a written statement, the board's president says the organization has a zero-tolerance policy towards racism. Quote, the comments of the 2 fired employees demonstrate a breach of the code of ethics of the nursing profession and the code of ethics and values of the organization.
Those actions and situations are unacceptable.
Well, the government is also investigating another incident. A job posting last fall at this hospital is raising concerns. It was open to white-skinned candidates only. The staff was apparently having trouble with a patient suffering from dementia who could be violent towards visible minorities. There are questions whether the intent was racist, but the posting did violate the rights of employees who could not apply due to the color of their skin. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Joliette, Quebec.
Asian women targets of a murderous spree in Atlanta. Coming up, why police don't believe this was a hate crime. In the U.S., 8 people were killed in a shooting rampage. 6 of the victims are Asian American women. A suspect is now charged in their murders, and as Jackson Prosco explains, there are questions about whether this attack was a hate crime.
In less than an hour, 3 shootings targeted 3 Atlanta area spas, unfolding in rapid succession.
While at that location, we received another call across the street at shots fired.
Of the 8 people killed, 7 are women and 6 are Asian American. The suspect, 21-year-old Robert Aaron Long, was arrested late Tuesday, identified by his parents after police released surveillance footage.
And yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did.
Despite the targeted nature of the attack, police were quick to downplay any suggestion of a hate crime, based on what they say the suspect told them.
He apparently has an issue, what he considers a sex addiction. He sees them as an outlet for him, that some things that he shouldn't be doing, and that an issue with porn, and that he was attempting to take out that temptation.
But the context is inescapable. According to the group Stop AAPI Hate, Asian Americans have reported being the victims of at least 3,800 separate hate crimes in the U.S. during the past year, some deadly.
A crime against any community is a crime against us all.
The rhetoric from former President Donald Trump about the origins of the pandemic,
China virus,
coincided with the rise in race-based attacks, which continue to this day.
But knowing the increasing level of hate crime against our Asian American brothers and sisters, we also want to speak out in solidarity with them.
Police say the suspect in Atlanta not only admitted to carrying out the shootings, but may have planned to drive to Florida to carry out more attacks. Whatever his motive, his alleged actions have left the community already on edge, reeling. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
The Irish band U2 took a trip back in time for St. Patrick's Day. Kicking off a virtual tour, they re-released this homecoming concert from 2001. We're back in a moment. Canada says Iran's final report on the downing of Ukraine Airlines Flight 752 is incomplete. Iran's Civil Aviation Authority blames human error, repeating what the country's military said when the jet was shot down in January 2020. All 176 crew and passengers were killed, including 138 people with ties to Canada. The Canadian government has the report and says it makes no attempt to answer critical questions about what truly happened. Ottawa plans to release the results of its own investigation. A symbolic victory tonight for same-sex couples in Japan. A district court has ruled the government's ban on same-sex marriages is unconstitutional. This is Japan's first ruling on the legality of same-sex unions. It has no immediate effect, but it is expected to bolster efforts for legalization. Japan's constitution defines marriage as one of mutual consent of both sexes. Same-sex couples have no parental rights to any children and can't inherit their partner's assets. Japan is the only G7 nation that doesn't fully recognize same-sex partnerships. Twice unlucky. Up next, St. Patrick's Day jigs don't jive with the pandemic. In honor of St. Paddy's Day, folks in Dublin were treated to aerial artistry. More than 500 drones synchronized to form shamrocks and Celtic art. The Orchestra of Lights was produced to offer some hope and happiness to people in Ireland and around the world. This is the second year in a row that the annual parade had to be cancelled. Bars and pubs in Canada aren't feeling the luck of the Irish again this year. Many establishments are facing restrictions on the number of customers or limits on how late they can serve alcohol. Some aren't open at all, missing out on one of the biggest days of the year. So celebrations may be muted, but as Heather Yerkes West explains, a year into the pandemic, some festivities are forging ahead.
COVID or not, the owner of Calgary's Tool Shed Brewing Company is buzzing with excitement. He even bought a slushy machine.
So you don't necessarily just need Guinness. We've got a great stout with Irish whiskey slush on top.
With physically distanced tables and limits on capacity, the celebration this year will be muted. In BC, last call happens at 8. With all the restrictions, the owners of the Old Triangle Irish Ale House in Halifax decided not to bother.
When we sat back and looked at it, and with social distancing, it wouldn't have even been as profitable as normal. And we said, it would be a lot of work for what would be a tainted St. Patrick's Day.
In parts of Ontario, pubs remain closed. For Irish-born Sean O'Shea, it's been hard.
They cancelled Christmas. I had to cancel my wedding, but one of the hardest to hit was the cancellation of St. Patrick's Day because it's such a big day and such a big celebration.
The best way to celebrate is virtually at home. That is absolutely true, and hopefully this is the last year that we're going to have to do St. Patrick's Day this way, but it is certainly a necessity given where we are in the pandemic.
We've all become accustomed to adapting holidays to COVID restrictions, but this year St. Patrick's Day has the distinct honor of becoming one of the first celebrations to be touched by COVID twice.
It was 1 year ago that bars across the country first went dark, with no way of knowing how long it would be before people would be able to gather again. But with vaccines rolling out, we can finally see at the end of the rainbow there really is a pot of gold.
People are really excited. They see the light on the horizon.
And there will be plenty to celebrate next year. Heather Yurex West, Global News, Calgary.
And that is Global National for this Wednesday night. I'm Robin Gill. We leave you tonight with a tune and a view for this St. Patrick's Day. Cellist Patrick Dexter put on an open-air show on Ireland's west coast. His lockdown concerts have gone viral during the pandemic. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.